This is an interview with Mrs. T.G. Gibson in her home at Ardmore, Oklahoma, on March 12, 1956. Mrs. Gibson, when and where were you born?
I was born in Lebanon, Tennessee in 1890.
When did you come to the Indian Territory?
In 1905.
For what reason did you move here?
We came here for my mother's health.
Did you move directly to Ardmore?
Oh, no. I went with my family to Paul's Valley.
How did you travel?
Oh, we traveled by train.
Did you attend school in the Indian Territory?
No. I had finished high school at the age of 13 in Lebanon, Tennessee, but I taught in the public schools of Paul's Valley at the age of 16.
What were some of the subjects you taught?
Oh, I taught the 3rd grade.
Well, what subjects? English, math, some of those. Can you tell me what you taught in that?
Well, in the 3rd grade, we had just the regular reading and writing and numbers, some geography.
Well, in what way did you heat and light the schools?
We used coal to heat the schools and kerosene lights to light them.
Did you have a janitor?
Oh, yes.
Well, exactly what were his jobs?
Well, he took care of keeping the schoolrooms clean, and he also acted as, in the case of first aid for the children on the playgrounds, and if necessary, he would once in a while take care of the rooms while the teachers were absent.
Where was the school situated?
In the heart of the residential section of the town.
Did you attend college?
Yes, I attended a girls' boarding school in Tennessee and Oklahoma University.
Did you have any unusual experiences while attending OU?
Well, yes, I had several unusual experiences. I was an organizer of a group that became charter members of one of the leading sororities on the campus. I was also one of the organizers of the first Pan-Atlantic at Oklahoma University. And as for something very, very unusual, I could tell you of a little incident which isn't too pleasant in some ways and yet very amusing in others. A friend of mine by the name of Win Ledbetter of Ardmore, Oklahoma, and I were dared to go out to the anatomical building and with one of the young doctors and look over the numerous stiffs that had been brought in that evening. So we did, and then after getting out there, we were dared to shave one of these, which we did. And had it not been for our splendid grades and the intercession of our parents, that would have been our last day in the university.
Well, could you tell me how many students attended the university
at that time we had 1,200 students, and we had just 3 buildings.
Oh. Well, where were you in the year of statehood?
Well, in 1907, I was still living in Paul's Valley, but I moved to Norman that year, and I went to Guthrie to attend the statehood celebration with my father. My father was one of the first district judges in Oklahoma, and he went to this meeting to be sworn in as judge. And while there, I attended what is known as the wedding of Mr. Oklahoma and Miss Indian Territory. Miss Oklahoma was a very beautiful Indian girl from Muskogee who was gowned in a pretty purple dress and a light lavender feather boa and carried violets. Mr. Oklahoma wore the usual gentleman's costume. But it was a very spectacular festival. After this wedding ceremony, our governor, the first governor of Oklahoma, was sworn in, C.N. Haskell.
Well, how long did the event last?
Oh, the pageant lasted perhaps an hour.
Was there a great deal of excitement?
Oh, there's a tremendous crowd there. People had worked so long for statehood that they had come from the highways and byways from both Indian Territory and Oklahoma to attend this meeting. And then at that time it was necessary for all the state officers and the district officers to go into Guthrie to be sworn in office.
How did you travel to Guthrie?
By the Santa Fe train.
Were there any cars?
There were very few cars in Oklahoma at that time.
Back to the officials, how were they sworn into office?
Well, there was a large platform out in the open, and these officials were all sworn in before the large crowd of people.
In other words, just about like it is today?
Yes.
How did the Indians react to statehood?
Why, I think the majority of them were pleased.
What ceremonies were performed? For instance, were there any Indian dances?
At the
At the
inauguration?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Some very spectacular dances.
At the uniting of the two territories, were there?
Yes.
What was the weather like on Statehood Day?
It was a beautiful day.
Before the Indian Territory united with Oklahoma Territory to become a state, what laws ruled in the Indian Territory?
The Arkansas laws.
Will you please contrast the two territories?
Well, I would say that at first we would consider the people in Indian Territory were largely people from the southern states. The people in Oklahoma Territory were people from Kansas, Nebraska, and the middle western states. And many of them were known as the 89ers, those who had made the run. And as to the climate, the Indian Territory was warmer than the Oklahoma Territory as a whole. Now, another difference we find was the liquor situation. Indian Territory was dry, as Oklahoma's dry today. But Oklahoma Territory was wet. And the dividing line between Oklahoma Territory and Indian Territory, on this Oklahoma side, you would find saloons in practically every town.
The Indians didn't live any differently, in any different type of house, rather, shall I say, than the white people, did they?
Oh, no, not unless the Indians were living on the reservation.
Then what did they live in?
Well, they lived in the teepees.
Did they have schools, or do you know?
There have been Indian schools in the Indian Territory since the Civil War.
Oh. What was the schedule for the remainder of the day on Statehood Day?
Well, after the governor was sworn in, there were numerous festivities and private parties during the afternoon, and private dinners, and about 9 o'clock in the evening, the inaugural ball began. It was a very spectacular ball. The men and women were costumed as you would find them today. And
what were some of the more elaborate dresses of the women?
oh, you found and nets and silks and taffetas and beads and spangles.
What did you wear?
I wore a white net dress. And carried red roses.
What type of dancing did you do?
Oh, at that time, about the only dances that were known were the two-step and the one-step and the waltz.
What were the fashions like around Statehood Day?
Well, for daytime, the dresses were almost ankle length. We wore petticoats and taffeta petticoats for street wear so they would rattle. For evening wear, why, trains on your dresses were very fashionable and very low in the neck.
Were your dresses high-necked for street wear?
Well, yes.
Were all your clothes long-sleeved for your day dresses?
Well, some of them were short-sleeved, but not very, never to the shoulder.
How about your evening dresses? Were they?
The evening dresses were very low neck and no sleeves.
But they weren't strapless?
No.
Did you wear high heels?
Oh, yes. We wore high heels in the evening and high heels in the daytime. A low-heeled shoe, as you see it today, was unheard of then, except for bedroom slippers.
Were your dresses beaded? Were they intricate?
Some of them were very intricate.
But they weren't.
And colors were good. Black was particularly fashionable.
Were your dresses ornate? Did they have a lot of beading or just a moderate amount?
Well, a moderate amount.
Did you
They didn't wear the baubles then that they wear now.
Oh.
And they wore no costume jewelry. You wore either jewelry or no jewelry.
What were your hats like?
Well, some hats had flowers even in the wintertime, but the majority of them had plumes.
What type of plumes?
Oh, long feathery plumes.
Were they ostrich plumes?
Yes.
Were your hats large most of the time, or were they
yes.
small?
Oh, yes. You did not see the small hats you see today.
Did you wear makeup?
Some people did.
If so, what did they wear?
They wore rouge, some rouge on their cheeks, but very little rouge on their lips.
They didn't have lipstick? They wore rouge instead?
They had very few lipsticks at that time.
Well, how did you wear your hair?
Most people wore their hair in a pompadour.
Exactly what is a pompadour?
Well, a pompadour at that time was combing your hair over what we call a rat.
Up high?
Up high.
How long did it take to dress your hair?
Oh, probably 30 minutes or more.
What adorned your hair?
Well, sometimes you wore flowers in your hair, and frequently you wore fancy combs. Big, large combs were ornamental.
Did they have rhinestones and
oh, yes.
jewels?
Everybody carried party bags to carry when they went to the dances, to carry their dancing slippers in. They never thought of wearing the dancing slippers for the reason most of the people who went to the dances would walk if it went not too far.
What were your dancing slippers like?
Well, they were very ornate.
But also
Light.
high heel.
Oh, yes. But there were few carriages that day and time. Few cabs, either in city or in small towns.
Did you carry fans?
Oh, once in a while. Not often.
Just in the summertime, though.
You just were hot and liked it.
What were some of the amusements of that day?
Well, the dancing was very popular, and horseback riding, and the majority of the girls rode side saddle. Then tennis, croquet, and many would bowl.
Well, what attire would you wear when you went on the different activities?
Just the same clothes that you would wear anywhere else. Such a thing as shorts, pedal pushers were unheard of at that time.
Well, did you ever have picnics?
Well, a few picnics, but not as you know picnics today. They used to have what they called old settlers picnics that would last for 2 or 3 days, and everybody in the community and for miles around would come to those picnics. They had concessions, and it looked like the average county fair to us today, with merry-go-round and different food booths and various things, just as you see now.
Then they sold the food at the picnics instead of bringing their own?
Well, yes.
They didn't sit around well, they sat around and talked, didn't they?
Yes. It was a meeting ground, and it was a great place for politicians to meet and speak.
Well, how much did groceries cost during that day?
Well, as I remember it, they were very, very cheap. A pound of butter probably would cost 20 cents. Maybe a chicken, 25 to 30 cents.
Did the stores have sales?
Not often. Stores had hours.
What were their hours?
Just about the same hours you have today. If you lived in a small town, though, why, the hours would be shorter.
Did you have any slang? Were there any?
Oh, yes. Every age and every day has its slang. I don't remember, though.
Thank you, Mrs. Gibson, for assisting me in this interview. You have been most helpful and enlightening.
I'm glad to have been able to have told you what I have.
This is Sandy Peterson, a senior at Ardmore High School.